Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by Joe Fordyce, our Flyers pre- and post-game live producer. And Joe, it wouldn't be Flyers hockey without some overtime. And how about overtime and a couple of shootouts in back-to-back games? But the Flyers win both of them, a shootout over the Islanders and a shootout over the Penguins. A lot of close games to start, Joe, but I think the Flyers are showing some resolve in these games. They've played 6 one-goal games in their first 9 games. They've gone to overtime 4 times. And Rick Tocchet talked about how he likes that his team's dealing with some pressure early and handling it. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I think we've become trained as people who are in this every day to think when the game is close late that it's automatically going to overtime. We just kind of assume it at this point. But yeah, it's good to see them showing that the fight and the competitiveness, and it's really they've kind of been this way with all levels of opponents. Florida, Pittsburgh. You're kind of not opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the record so far this season, but in terms of projections, I think we all expect Florida to be one of the best teams in the league, and we kind of expect Pittsburgh to be, one of the lower teams in the Eastern Conference. And but it doesn't matter the opponent; they're hanging in there. They're getting to overtime. They're winning games in overtime and shootout. And that's, obviously something that has been a problem in past years with the Flyers. So far it's not. And I feel like it shows something about the chemistry of this team. I feel like you can see that the chemistry of this team has come together pretty quickly. Now, a lot of the guys are the same, but, new coach comes in, new systems, things like that. It seems like everybody's kind of bought in, and everybody's going in the same direction. And I think that's a credit to Rick Tocchet first and foremost, but a credit to these guys too, these players that, I think you see growth in pretty much each and every player on this team right now, early on here in the season. And, to say that I was expecting it is probably not true. I did expect a more together unit with Rick Tocchet coming on as head coach, especially when you talk to the guys during training camp. I expected them to be a very, a tight-knit group. And listen, we can go back to what John Tortorella said over the past couple of years. We mentioned there's a lot of the same guys. John Tortorella, on repeated occasions, said that this was one of the best locker rooms dressing rooms he had ever been around, been a part of. And I think what you're seeing now is that room and coach kind of in lockstep so far.
And it sounds crazy, but it's pretty fun to watch the Flyers in the shootout. Obviously, historically, as an organization, they have not fared well in the shootout. But of late, the last season, they were pretty decent in shootouts. And right now, they're off to a nice start because they have some more talent in the shootout. Matvei Michkov, Bobby Brink, and of course, a newcomer, Trevor Zegras. But Joe, Zegras was not available for last night's shootout, Tuesday night, because he got a misconduct late in the game. Things got feisty after overtime, once the overtime horn sounded, and Zegras was right in the middle of it. Guys really stood up for one another. I think the Flyers really like that, and Zegras seems like he's gotten an early taste of this Flyers-Penguins rivalry.
Well, I think what's happened is Zegras has made himself a marked man. The next time these two teams meet, kind of, I'm not going to say he threw a punch, but getting involved after the refs have kind of separated things and kind of sparking it to start all over again. And it took him no time to get feisty. And I feel like that is a product of what Rick Tocchet has instilled among these guys. you know, it might sound cliche, but I really liked Talk's sound bite last night about the wolf pack and all that sort of stuff. Based on but what Talk said last night, hockey itself is very cliche based, and I feel like what he said last night is something that everybody, every fan, every player can put their arms around and say, this was a night where the bond got stronger, the team chemistry, everything really took a step forward with what went on last night and the guys sticking up for each other, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I kind of couldn't help but think of the movie The Hangover when he started mentioning Wolfpack. But it was funny how Talkett even laughed that he was like, I don't mean to get philosophical here, but I did like his analogy that as a wolf pack, the lone wolf's not going to survive. But if the wolves are in a pack and they're doing it together, they're going to survive. So I thought that was cool stuff from Talkett, and a very good point that this team is, I think, tight knit, very well together. And you even see some guys that you're not expecting to really get in the middle of things, Nikita Gerbenkin dropping the gloves for a teammate. Matvey Mishkov did it earlier this season. I think it was in the preseason, if I remember correctly, or in the first couple of the games in the regular season. He did it for Travis Konechny. And now you're seeing Trevor Zegras, who, of course, I don't think anyone would say is a fighter, get into the middle of things to stand up for himself and for teammates. So,
and I think what you're seeing too, Jordan, is that they're doing it in a. This might sound kind of odd, but they're doing it in a way that's not putting the team. The Gerbenkin penalty ended up putting them on the penalty kill. Top didn't mind that afterwards because he was there for a teammate. They're doing it in a way that's not reckless, I'll say. There's penalties. Obviously, there's penalties when you fight and there's roughings and all that sort of things like that. But they're not doing it like the opponent are taking the penalties too. So a lot of this stuff is offsetting. And look, you can't let yourself be pushed around. I think we saw that in the past couple of years. There were times out there where a guy like Konechny would take a huge hit and then he would have to go out later in the game and fight his own battle. And it's not as simple as just inserting Nick Delorier into the lineup. The other guys have to be, they have to make the opponent aware that they're there as well. And I think that's what you're seeing. And I mean, was it entertaining what Zegras did last night? Yeah, it was. It probably would have been less entertaining if they were down 5 goals, but they weren't. And if they can be like a wolf pack and not put their team, behind the 8 ball, I think that's the sweet spot. That's where this team wants to be. And again, to go back to the wolf pack comment, I think that could be a motto for this whole team, because even when you look at the way they play, they don't have some of that top end talent where somebody's going to carry them. So they have to play as a pack, because if they're not playing as a pack, they're not an effective team, because they don't have superstar talent at the top of their lineup. And that's just the way it is.
And Rick Tocchet even mentioned that when we were asking him about Matvey Mishkov earlier in the season and his minutes and how they've been coaching him. And he said, listen, we're not a one-line team. Like, we're not going to be a team that plays one line 22, 23, 24 minutes. We're a balanced team. And the Flyers do need that. They need a balance, even when it comes to scoring and how they do things. So I think we're seeing that so far too with the Flyers. They are a team that's getting some contributions from everyone, and that's been a real positive. And you're seeing the Noah Cates line be great. You're starting to see Konechny score more. Couturier and Zegras are point per game players through 9 games. Mishkov, I think, is starting to find his game. You're even seeing the fourth line, I think, at times have some effective shifts. So the Wolfpack comment really is a good one because I think that's really going to kind of symbolize how the Flyers have to play this season. They're not going to have just one person run the show. It's going to have to be a team effort, and good teams can do that. They like some of the best teams do not always have like a bona fide top 5, top 6 star. They have a very good team led by some good players and balance efforts, and the Flyers are definitely getting that.
Yeah, and I go back to the first few games of the season and just talking to some people close to the team, and more than once I heard the comment, the Noah Cates line can't carry your team. And I think now what you're seeing is you're seeing these other lines step up. They're playing their roles. So the Cates line becomes complementary instead of the line that's leading the team. Because I think we've discussed this. The best spot for you to be in is not to have a line led by a second or third line center carrying the team. It's just not sustainable. So I think the way that they've played the last few games is way more of the identity this team wants to have.
Absolutely. And Joe, as always, there's discussion about the Flyers in net. That what would be a Flyer season without goalie chatter? But this is good goalie chatter.
It's required at this point, the discussion.
Exactly. Um, but this is good goalie chatter because Samuel Ersson's gotten back-to-back starts and he's won them both in the shootout. And this is good, Joe, because for the Flyers, they've been craving this, just good, consistent goaltending, not only from one guy, but two. And they've gotten it now with Dan Vladar and Samuel Ersson. It's early, but they've had good discussions about who should be in net. I think some people were even a little bothered that Ersson got a second straight start. They thought the Flyers should have gone back to Dan Vladar on Tuesday night. But, Joe, I had no problem with it because a couple of things. Ersson was excellent in the overtime and shootout of the win Saturday. And to me, I think you reward a guy that plays that well late in the game. You go right back to him. And then secondly, the Flyers have 3 games in 4 nights coming up here starting Thursday. And you got to think they want Vladar to go against his former team on Sunday, the 3rd game of that stretch. So now if they won, they could play Vladar Thursday and Sunday, give him 2 games out of those 3, get Ersson in there Saturday for the first game of that back-to-back. And it kind of works out well there. And Ersson ended up delivering on the Flyers going back to him. He had a leaky goal in the first period. The second goal, Crosby's, is a crazy bounce, and then he was very good, as he typically is, in the shootout. What do you think of the Flyers' goaltending picture right now and how Ersson has kind of fueled the competition some more?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to what Rick Tocchet said in the stretch that Dan Vladar started the 3 games in a row. When people were asking about it, and rightfully so, and we were talking about it on pregame every single night. And Rick Tocchet, when asked, always pointed out Sam Ersson could go on a stretch too. And literally a week later, 8-9 days later, Sam Ersson goes on a stretch. And both of these guys, since we talked to them in mid-September at Media Day, have talked about how they're going to push one another, ride the hot hand. Neither of them are here to be a backup. I think right now we're seeing both of them play kind of like 1A starters, and that's okay. That's much different than backup. So right now, both guys are giving the team a chance to win. And I don't think entering the season, anybody was asking for more than that. I just go back to a couple conversations you and I had on this podcast talking about how over the last 2 years, and particularly last year, if they even got league average goaltending, they might be a playoff team. And right now they're getting much better than that. So you have to ride this out. And again, the 3 and 4, when you see that come up on the schedule, I remember last year, particularly later in the season, thinking, who are we going to see in goal? Now I think I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it's kind of just plug and play. Mm-hmm. And if you want to say, okay, Vladar against his old team Sunday and build backward from there, which probably means Ersson Saturday's game and likely Vladar on Thursday's game, you would think. So I think that's it isn't a bad problem because you don't have a Vasilevsky, a Bobrovsky. You don't have a clear-cut number one. So I don't think there's going to be any this is going to sound dumb because last week we used the word controversy, but I don't think there's going to be any controversy because there's not one guy that's kind of over the other one. And that's not a bad thing for a team in this spot.
And I give a lot of credit to both goalies. They have said all the right things too. Sometimes this can happen and maybe a goalie says the wrong thing because he's a little irritated he hasn't played and it creates somewhat of a drama. Both goalies have just been outstanding in what they've said. Vladar has been such a good teammate. You can tell he supports Ersson. And then Ersson, the past couple of games, has said, hey, listen, you got to play the hottest goalie. And Vladar is playing incredible. So you roll with that. And he's like, I like competition. This is good. So really, there's been, I think, a good camaraderie between both goalies. And that really, really helps too. So I think both goalies have just been great in what they've said. And of course, they've been very good on the ice. So I think the Flyers cannot be any more pleased than what they've gotten out of the goalie tandem. I think they've gotten what they wanted. They brought in Vladar to fuel competition, to play almost like a number one if he plays well, and then also to make Ersson better. They thought that would be good support for Ersson, and I think they've gotten that. I think Ersson has fueled on the competition. There's a little less pressure on his shoulders. And so far, the Flyers are seeing the results. They're 5-3-1. They're not giving up a lot of goals at all. And I think in large part because their goaltending's been there.
Yeah, and I think first of all, I think that matters so much. And maybe talk his system where we want the goalie to see the puck. Maybe that's what we're seeing here. Mm-hmm. And I give credit to guys like a Nick Seeler who, maybe not super obviously, but probably had to change his style a little bit since he was so block shot heavy in previous years under John Tortorella. And I just really, it's a very impressive output by this group in a really short amount of time. I mean, we're not even 10 games into the season here yet. And they look like a different team than last year. Mm-hmm. There are nights where they kind of get back into this look where the power play is not clicking and maybe they just look like they're having trouble generating offense. I think of the Ottawa game, the last road game. But one, that's going to happen. And number two, we're not bogged down talking about bad goals allowed after each game, that when they do lose, the headline isn't bad goals allowed. They gave up 6, they gave up 5. It's not that. The games are competitive. So it really is a different identity for this team, and really quickly. And I think that's impressive.
I do too. And Joe, it's really interesting that you mentioned how there's times where it seems like they're struggling to generate offense. And I feel like some people have even said like this team can be boring at times because sometimes they've had so few shots and the opponent has had so few shots that it's a very low event game. But to me, man, who cares if it's boring at times? If you're winning, that is not boring. And to me, I think of the Hurricanes. They've been called boring at times in Rob Rendemore's tenure. I mean, they are a perennial contender. They are in the playoffs. Yeah. They are one of the top 5 teams in the league every season. I don't care if it's a little boring at times. If it produces wins and playoff hockey, I'll take a little bit of boring at times. And if the Flyers are not giving up odd man rushes and they're keeping their goals against down, that's good. I don't find that boring. So I don't buy that whole boring talk.
Yeah, I mean, so the people that say it's boring at times, when you go back to last year, the times that it wasn't boring is pretty much because the Flyers were getting lit up by a team that had a good top power play, explosive forwards at the top of their lineup. And, I just think of the last 2 years when it was, they played a team like a Tampa that had speed and skill on their power play, and you were just watching them go up and down the ice. I think of Florida, obviously. You think of teams like, not necessarily last year, but the Bruins a couple years ago. The games would be, if you took your fandom out of it, they'd be entertaining because you were watching a really good team go up and down the ice. But your team didn't have a chance to win. So, now the fact that maybe it's boring a little bit more because you're in every game.
Mhm.
And the Flyers are not a team right now that's built to go into a high event game with a Florida, even in New Jersey, teams that have a lot of top end speed.
Mhm.
They're not built to play with those teams in a sort of up and down high event game. So they have to play at low event and give themselves a chance to win. And I think if you took a poll of fans, low event, used other people's words, boring, with a really good chance to win, or high event with very little chance to win, there's no contest in what people want to watch, because it's been a long few years of the other stuff. So maybe now, it's time to start focusing on what is the ceiling for this current group of Flyers.
I agree, and I don't think the Flyers can win track meets consistently, and so they have to play a little more low event, and I think the offense will naturally come too. I think they had a season high in shots against Pittsburgh on Tuesday night. I think they can get more into the 30s consistently and win. And as long as they're playing a little low event on the back end and giving their goalie a chance to see the puck and keeping that score a little more in the twos and threes and the ones, they have a chance to win games. And Taka talked about how this is good for a team. He said in his experience as an assistant, teams that get to the playoffs are teams that prepare themselves in games that are low scoring and can kind of fuel on the pressure and get used to that. And I think the Flyers are getting a good taste of early pressure in these close games, and perhaps that'll really pay off down the road.
Yeah, you want young players to get. I'll go back to a couple of years ago when John Tortorella sent down some young players to the Phantoms to play in high leverage games, to learn about that. The Flyers right now are playing in high leverage, tight games where one mistake this way or that way could cost you the game. And I think that's valuable experience. And to be getting it this early on in the tenure of the new coach, I think is very beneficial. And you think about it, when Talk was in Vancouver, when he won the Jack Adams Award as the league's best coach. Listen, do they have some more high-end talent than the Flyers do right now? They did. But did they have that much more? I don't know about that.
Mhm.
Of course, Quinn Hughes is one of the most dynamic players in the league. Elias Pettersson, same thing. Beyond that, I think there's a little more similarities than we maybe think between the situations. And, he had them in the Western Conference Finals. So I'm not suggesting the Flyers are going to the Eastern Conference Finals. But what I am suggesting is that there is a chance we could have underestimated what this team could do in year one under Taka.
And Joe, before we wrapped up, we wanted to talk a little bit about Jett Luchanko and the team's decision to send him back to juniors. Joe, I really thought it was a fine call. You can probably argue or debate about why Luchanko was maybe here to begin with. He was here for 4 games. He played fourth line minutes, and it just seemed like he was destined to go back to Guelph, his junior team in the OHL. But I think the Flyers need to get him down there and get him just playing huge minutes, get him scoring, and really have him also prepare to play for Team Canada again in the World Junior Championships. So I think what the Flyers did was fine. They had him here. They gave him a taste of the NHL again. I don't think it will stun his development to have him here for 2 or 3 weeks, in and out of the lineup a little bit, but around the NHL team. Maybe see if he can really make some serious grounds and maybe play here for the full season. It didn't happen. and now he's headed back to junior. I get a sense he'll go down there, he'll score. I think he'll get his confidence up playmaking wise, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing here is with Luchanko, and even more so with a guy like Alex Bump, is guys that didn't come out and grab their spot on the NHL roster. And the Flyers are in a position where they are with their rebuild that there are spots to be grabbed, but they want to see them grabbed. They don't want to just give somebody a spot that maybe is not ready for it yet. And I think that's what we've seen here. I know the headline is kind of, okay, your top 10 pick from last year, second straight year that he's gotten sent back down. I think last year was really a formality that he got sent back down. This year might have been too, but it might have just been what you said. It doesn't make any sense for a player that young with that much potential to come up, play fourth line minutes, or watch from the press box. It just doesn't make any sense. Those players have to play. He's only 19. So let's see where it goes from here. I don't think it's quite time to be concerned yet about Luchanko.
Agreed. And of course, you probably want to see him have a little more offense, a little more shoot mentality up here. He's very much a pass first player. That's probably always going to be his way of playmaking. But I think there's time for him to develop more of a shoot first mentality. And I thought Danny Briere had a great comment the other day that definitely made me open my eyes a little bit, was that when an 18, 19-year-old kid comes up here and plays in the NHL, he's just trying to do the right things. So when he's out there with some star players or some really good players, he's naturally going to try to feed them the puck rather than take the first shot, because you're just trying to please people, and you don't want to look like that selfish kid that's always ripping the puck and not passing it to the player that's been doing this for a while. And he said that's very natural. It's just instinct when a kid comes up here. I think naturally over time, as he gets older, as he plays more, he'll be a little more selfish and try to shoot the puck a little bit more and try to score. And it just takes time. I mean, he turned 19 in August. So, yeah, I'm really not worried. I'm not ready to worry about Jett Luchanko or the team picking him at 13th overall in 2024. Like, give it time. Let's see where it goes. There's still some really good strengths of his, too. He's really, really fast. He's really, really smart. Those are two good qualities that I think he can build his game out from. And we'll see how he does down in the junior in OHL with Guelph, and if he plays for Team Canada, and he can have a really good season and set himself up pretty well for next training camp.
Yeah, and the other thing I would think of is, like, look back at a guy like Tyson Forrester. I know it's not the same trajectory, but when he first came to the Flyers, it was like, all we've heard about is the shot. Why doesn't he shoot the puck? Why doesn't he shoot the puck? Well, now we see he's gotten comfortable shooting the puck, and you see what the results are. So just think about it that way. I mean, similar situation, drafted highly, talked about a lot of high-end skill, and you're just kind of not seeing it right away. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're seeing is, with development and time, that comes around. So I think it's time to, and right now they have other guys that are playing well. So it's not like they're, oh man, this is going to leave a huge hole because Luchanko is not doing what we expected him to do. It's not that case. They can send him down and let him play and develop.
Well, Joe, as we mentioned, a busy stretch for the Flyers coming up. 3 games in 4 nights starting Thursday, all 7:00 starts, all at home, and all on NBC Sports Philadelphia and NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus. Joe Fordyce will have Flyers pre- and post-game live for you before and after all 3 of those games. Joe, thanks so much. Great to see you as always. Great to chat with you. A huge thank you to Tom Feiner for helping us here early in the morning on the Flyers Talk podcast as he deals with a ton of other things. And Flyers fans, as always, thank you so much for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, please rate and listen. And we cannot wait to talk to you next time.